the question is, will Donald Trump become president? You say yes, despite his rhetoric. We'll take a quick listen to
I think he can.
Few of the things he said. Okay. Few of the things he said after the first attempt on his life. Take a listen.
We must defeat Comrade Kamala Harris, and we are to stop the country-destroying liberal agenda. Once and for all, we're going to do it. We have to stop it. We're going to save our country. And these fools, Kamala, who's a Marxist, these fools are letting them come into our country, destroy our country.
I'm angry about young American girls being raped and murdered by savage criminal aliens. I'm angry about rampant inflation destroying our middle class, and the American people are damn angry too. We're all angry.
And when you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. When you're dealing with them, you can't be too nice. You really can't be. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to be nice.
All right. So we can all stipulate that if there was an attack, God forbid, on a Democrat, and when there was, it was blamed on the right, right? When Paul Pelosi was attacked, when Gabby Giffords was attacked, on and on, completely blamed. So Donald Trump would get blamed if there was an attack on Democrats. But whataboutism, I think, is pretty cheap. The question is, how does Donald Trump not play to his worst instincts? Okay, you want to talk about a few hours before the assassination attempt. I'm looking at the tweet right now, or social media post. I hate Taylor Swift. Gee, it plays right into Democrats' talking points that this is somebody who is way too emotional and, I don't want to say unhinged, but that would be the Democratic talking point about Donald Trump, does it not?
Sure, it's if it were Ronald Reagan, he could say, I hate Love and Spoonful. I mean, it was ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't know why he does it. But I will tell you this, the sound cuts that you ran, the montage,
yep,
90% of that was fine. Fine. He can do issues. If he wants to call Kamala Harris a communist, he can call her a communist, okay? Because it is not true, but it's political rhetoric. It's not hateful. Yep. I want her to be crucified. This is what politicians do on both sides, and you know it. You know it. You've seen it. So as long as he's in the zone of saying, look, open border leads to rape and murder of Americans, that's true. And he can say it's true. But when he gets into eating Cocker Spaniels, and I hate Taylor Swift, he hurts himself. Now, I don't know why he does it. But the fact of the matter is, it's a matter of weighing the danger. That's what Americans are going to have to do on Election Day. So the left, the Harris supporters, they feel that Trump is a fascist, that he's going to burn a constitution, and he's going to do all kinds of things. And the right says, no, this progressive Kamala Harris is going to change every part of traditional America, including the economy. And so it's who's more dangerous? That's where we are. Now, I have a brilliant suggestion, because I try to bring in one brilliant suggestion for Leland every week. If I'm running the Trump campaign, and I don't think anybody could, so I'd last about probably 8 hours, I would say to the former president, put out a statement right now saying that you want Vice President Harris to co-sign a letter that would be issued to the American public to tamp down the hatred. Trump would propose that. Number one, Harris would have to do it, but it's Trump driving that. How brilliant is that?
You know, I guess there's many out there who wish. Well, you know, Bill, it's just what you do to me. It's just what you do to me. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of people out there who want to see Donald Trump elected, and there's a lot of them who want to see him follow your advice, because it's good political advice. As we started the segment, he's just not following it.
If he did that, he would win.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.